this computer. Hello, everybody. My name is Peter Larson with the Ottawa Forum on Israel-Palestine, and I have as my guest this morning Khalid Barakat. Khalid lives in Vancouver. And Khalid, thank you very much for spending a few minutes with us today.
Thank you, Peter, for having me.
Khalid, about a week and a half ago, many Canadians opened their newspaper to find a picture of you and a big article by a well-known journalist named Terry Glavin, who basically accused you of being a dangerous terrorist that we should somehow worry about. You must have seen that article as well. How did you react when you first saw it?
Well, I tell you, probably I was the #1 Canadian surprised, like more than any other Canadians about this article, because I never expected, first of all, that a major newspaper like the National Post would actually go as low as this. I mean, publishing something that is part of a smear campaign and distorting, facts, diverting the attention from the real discussion, and almost like running away from what is happening in Canada and in Palestine by just placing my picture first page and presenting me as a dangerous man to the society and to the people of Canada, and that basically trying to lead the readers to be scared. And I thought that what is the intention? I mean, is it to spread fears, in Canada? Is it racism? Is it benefiting, a pro-Israel lobby to distort? And then you read the article and you realize it's all of that in one package.
Khalid, why don't we, if you don't mind, just to help our readers know who you are, where do you come from? When did you come to Canada? Are you a Canadian citizen now? Just tell us a little bit about your background. So fill us in.
Yes, I left Palestine when I was a child. I was like 12 years old. I lived 14 years of my life in the United States. From 1997 until today, I have been living in Canada for almost 20 years and some. And I have been a worker all of my life. If you check my working record, whether in the US or in Canada, you would find me working in factories and print shops and delivery and, jobs that I'll say that doesn't require a lot of skills, because I have left school when I was just 10 years old. But I got involved in the Palestinian movement at an early age, maybe 15, 16 years old. And since then, I have been a dedicated activist for the liberation of Palestine. Now, through my activism is where I read and educated myself. And now I write in cultural magazines and the daily newspaper in Beirut, Al Akhbar.
I had actually, I've been interested in the Israel-Palestine question for some time. I had never heard of you before Terry Glavin introduced me to
you. Yes, I'm not a famous person, and I don't get invited to mainstream media or to speak to major newspapers, because usually voices like my voice is considered to be a radical leftist Palestinian.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not interested in our views. They are interested in sometimes Palestinian academics or liberal voices, but not our voices. And so I'm not famous, nor that I want to be famous. The idea is that I want to focus on what is more important for me, and that is to raise the awareness in a real way and the conscious in a real way about what happens in Palestine and what is the Palestinian struggle is all about.
Well, certainly today, or most recently, with the killing of the Al Jazeera journalist, Palestinian journalist, and then the terrible events at the funeral, Israel has certainly an interest in trying to draw attention off in a different direction. That would seem. Why do you think the Israel lobby is, and I say Israel lobby, I mean not only Terry Gavin, but the Israeli embassy, and then CIJA, and I understand that B'nai B'rith even has a petition that they want you deported from the country. Why are they undertaking this, in your view?
I think they want to divert the attention from what is happening in Palestine and what is happening in Canada in terms of Palestine and the relationship that is happening today between Canada and the conflict in Palestine. So, for example, in Canada lately, we have been witnessing a more organized involvement by the student movement. Four major universities in Canada voted, to boycott Israel and to support Palestinian human rights and Palestinian national rights for return and liberation. They said that Israel is violating every human rights of Palestinians. In the book, they based their decisions on major reports produced lately by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and other human rights entities related to the United Nations. I mean, these are today facts that no one can ignore. What is Israel establishing in Palestine is a colonialist, settler, racist system, very much similar to the one that existed in apartheid South Africa. And so Israel don't like this, and they call the student movement and anyone who criticizes Israel an anti-Semitic. I'm not the only one who's being called anti-Semitic. They're trying to criminalize the entire movement for Palestine, that if you criticize Israel, it means that you are criticizing Judaism and Jews, and that is.
So are you anti-Semitic? Do you hate Jews? What's your view on that?
That's this is crazy, because the thing is, I was always, since early age, involved in a Palestinian radical approach to the Palestinian question. And my understanding of the conflict, that it's not religious conflict at all. Jews lived in Palestine as part of our society and an integral part of the Palestinian society for a long time. But settler colonialism is something different. Settlers who were either forced to come to Palestine as a result of the Second World War, and some of the Western countries blocked even the gates in front of Jews to flee for their life, from Germany, just to push them back to Germany to be massacred again. They were forced to come to Palestine, some of them, and to settle in Palestine. But this was used always by the Zionist movement to settle Palestine and to establish a political and economic system that serves the interests of colonialist power in the region and imperialist power in the region. This is my understanding of the conflict. That has nothing to do with being Muslim or Christian or Jewish. Now, of course, Palestinians are Muslims and Christians, the vast majority of them. And what happened is that Israel always tried to portray the conflict as if it's a conflict between Muslims and Jews. And this is absolutely false. Historically, it's false. Palestinians are not just Muslims. And it's false because we see the more and more involvement by the Jewish young generation in the Palestinian struggle. I mean, since the early century, we have, Jewish strugglers, writers, artists, who have been fighting along Palestinians for our rights, and they are integral part of our liberation movement. So, but we know that this anti-Semitic charge is absolutely being used as a tool to criminalize criticism of Israel. Now, does racism exist? Yes. Is there racism against, Jewish people? Absolutely. Just like there are racism against blacks and against, and other people and oppressed communities. This is, this exists. But to use it as a tool in order to oppress Palestinians, and more dangerously, Peter, they're using it to transfer the responsibility of the Holocaust and the massacres against the Jews that were carried by Nazi Germany, transfer that responsibility to the shoulders of the Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims, as if, we are the responsible party of the massacres that took place against Jews. And so, as if we have to also, like, almost pay the price twice. Because what happened in Germany was also part of it was also because they wanted to get rid of the Jews from Europe and to solve what they call the Jewish question, and to benefit the Zionist project in Palestine.
One of the charges that Glavin makes, based apparently on Israeli intelligence, is that you're involved with the PFLP, an organization that I'm not very familiar with actually, but as Canada has it on its list of terrorist organizations, and with Sammy, which I know a little bit more about as a Palestinian prisoner rights organizations. Can you tell, I'm sure you're familiar with both those organizations. Are you in fact members of them or supporters of them? And how would you respond to Glavin's report based on Israeli intelligence?
You see, Peter, if you check these allegations, you would find that the pro-Israel lobby had basically accused tens of organizations to be proxies of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine or part of the PFLP. I don't know of any organization or leftist writer, activist in North America that was not accused of being part or a proxy of the PFLP. And the reason they do that is because we're not religious. And so they have this contradiction. And in one hand, they want to criminalize us by being radical leftists. And on the other hand, they're calling us, we're against Jews, and, as if we're anti-Semitic. And so that's one of their contradictions. But more importantly, they're saying that this organization, the PFLP, is an organization who carried, like hijacked airplanes in the 60s. So that was before I was born, and they won't tell you that not one single person actually got killed in all of these hijacking operations by the PFLP, not even injured. Because the idea that Palestinians then had, especially the PFLP, that these kind of operations, the intentions behind it was to actually explain to the world who are the Palestinians, what are they fighting for. They literally did this as a media operations more than, terrorist operations. And the other thing is that they want to criminalize us because the PFLP is an organization that is listed on the so-called terrorist list. just like Hamas and Hezbollah and many other organizations. So in order to criminalize us by law, they cannot say, well, because of you have these ideas. They'll say because you are a member or a leader or a spokesperson of this organization. And it's just, they did this, for example, with the Palestinian youth movement for organizing a cultural event about a writer named Ghassan Kanafani. And they said that they are, a proxy of the PFLP. There is reports that came out from the Israeli intelligence and from the a ministry called the Strategic Affairs in Israel. I don't think that ministry exists anymore, but a couple of years ago, and they listed almost every organization in North America who is leftist in nature or progressive as a proxy for the PFLP.
Sammy Doon, just say a word about Sammy Doon.
Sammy Doon actually was established in Canada in 2011, I think. It is an international, it is a network of internationalists and Palestinians whose main goal is to defend Palestinian political prisoners and to raise awareness about the struggle and the suffering of Palestinian political prisoners, something that Israel don't want us to talk about, because Israel wants people to believe that these are terrorists who are being locked in jails, and that is being done for the security of Israelis. But when you look at the Palestinian political prisoners, you will find out that there are children in Israeli jail. You will find out that there is hundreds of Palestinians are being placed under administrative detentions without charge or trial. You would see, for example, tens of Palestinian political prisoners who either going through, illness or cancers or, need immediate care and treatment, and they have been in prison for 30 years, some of them 35 years. There are prisoners who are almost in Israeli prisons for 40 years now, like Karim Yunus, Walid Dakka. And Israel doesn't want you to know also that these political prisoners are actually the leaders of the Palestinian political movement, just like in South Africa, in Northern Ireland, in all struggles against colonizations, where political prisoners are our writers and student leaders and labor movement leaders and workers, and they actually come from all over Palestine, from the river to the sea. They're from Haifa, they're from Jaffa, they're from Jerusalem, they're from Gaza, from everywhere. And they don't want you to also know that amongst these Palestinian political prisoners are the people like Marwan Barghouti and Ahmed Saadat. And, these are Palestinian national leaders and icons who have so much respect by the Palestinian people. And also, Israel doesn't want us to defend Palestinian political prisoners because some of them were involved in armed struggle. And for us, armed struggle is a form of a struggle, and it is not something that we are going to shy away from. Palestinians have the right under international law to struggle against occupation and colonization. People have the right to defend themselves. And when Israel attacked Palestinians with US-made weapons, F-16s, and the most advanced technology, and killed thousands of people in Gaza in 2008, in 2011, in 2014, and they say, how can Palestinians defend themselves? I mean, it is the Palestinian political prisoners are the front line of the Palestinian resistance. And Sammy Doon exposes a reality that Israel wants to hide. And that's why they keep attacking Sammy and calling it the organization who wants to free the terrorists, and not an organization that wants to see Palestinian political prisoners.
Khalid, we're going to have to wind that up now. I thank you for giving our audience an opportunity to see the man that Terry Glavin alleges to be a dangerous terrorist. They can draw their own conclusions. But I do note that while these accusations are out there, but in the years you've been Canadian living in Canada, they still haven't arrested you for anything. So presumably there's not much evidence for dangerous terrorist activity in Canada in any event. So thank you very much for spending a few minutes with us, and we'll follow this dossier carefully going forward.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for having me.